Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the journey of Venus and Mercury, both moving into the sign of Cancer on the 17th of June. In the case of Venus, this is for 26 days and Mercury for 17. Now the sign of Cancer is of course ruled by the moon, so very much about feeling, emotion, atmosphere, security and nurture. But this duo have been in the very interactive and quick moving sign of Gemini, and as they come to the end of that journey, they are conflicted by the dreamy, drifting energy of Neptune. And in fact, when this dynamic duo move into Cancer, that Neptune influence is still prevalent. And indeed, Pluto, the planet of truth and transformation, is in a very cool, analytical, detached angle to them as they move forwards. I'm going to go through all of this for you, share the archetypes for each planet, what we can expect in Cancer, what their exact combination on Monday the 17th represents, and also share the event charts for that conjunction from a solar but also natal perspective. Please stay with me. I will then go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, or your interaction and views is truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, it's about 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help it grow by clicking that subscription button, but also the bell notification symbol. I am a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials. I don't edit these. As they come in, I share as is. If you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please check out the link below. And also within this, I provide an overarching astrological analysis of the most important influence of each day. So we get the big picture, plus we can enjoy our zodiac sign. If you're a patron, you can download a Venus and also a Mercury factoid. If you go to Patreon and you'd like to sign up, you can do so from $3 a month. If you are a patron and you want a one-to-one with me or my wife Alyssa, you can get 20% off. Finally, if you'd like to ascend above zodiac astrology and embrace more serious natal astrology, why not check out my packages at 30% off. You can get a character analysis, a life roadmap, but also your 12 months transits. If you know your tropical astrology, you can get your draconic charts based on your soul or karmic journey. Please see below for more. So at 6:20 a.m. Universal Time on the 17th of June, Venus glides into Cancer for 26 days. And at 7 minutes past 9 a.m. Universal, it's Mercury, so very, very close together, and then they come into an exact conjunction at 12:42 p.m. again based on Universal. Venus in Cancer, let's think about Venus. Of course, it rules two zodiac signs. Its rulership of Taurus is very sensual because of the earth, but it is essentially about values. It can be about money, but it can also be about how we value ourselves. Our appreciation of good food and good wine, very much coming from this particular zodiac sign. But the sign of Libra, that's much more to do with relating, aesthetics, how we present ourselves. So Venus in Cancer can have a desire to create a more enhanced home environment. So don't be surprised if you find yourself reaching for the paint charts over the next few weeks and deciding to actually make some changes. If the decorative order of your abode is good, you may be finding yourself tempted by some new home furnishings. But of course, Venus can be about relating, Cancer very much about family. So there is the potential for some kind of reunion or gathering or reconnection with this duo moving into the sign. But Venus in Cancer is also nudging us to try to find ways to be more emotionally secure. and particularly in our relationships, and basically have the confidence to express how we feel. It is a very sensitive location for Venus, and Mercury does bring a little bit of a different vibe, because Mercury in Cancer is not its best location, because Mercury likes precision and detachment. In the sign of Cancer, it's more watery. Mercury, of course, rules the sign of Gemini, but also the very practical sign of Virgo. But as these two came to the end of their journey, at the start of this day, on Monday the 17th of June, they were squared up by Neptune. Neptune is on the anaretic point in the sign of Pisces, and Neptune takes 160 years to go through its full cycle. So when it moves into Aries briefly next year, it's breaking through the end of that whole journey, which it will become more entrenched in Aries in 2026. So essentially we're being asked to think in a bigger way about how we're spiritually connected. But of course Mercury and Venus combined in Gemini is about quick communication. But it's possible that someone could get the wrong end of our stick as we come into this week, or things aren't quite as clear with someone in terms of how we're interacting with them as we'd like. And the potential for that confusion is still there, but in a disassociate way. So the square, obviously Neptune's in a water sign, Venus and Mercury now in a water sign, but they're still squaring up within a couple of degrees for the first few days of Venus and Mercury's journey through the sign of Cancer. But what Mercury in Cancer does, I feel, in a way, is encourage us to think more about how it feels. And because we've had an opportunity to have a lot of sparkling conversation right at the start of June, but then that got challenged by the stern energies of Saturn and then the mystical energies of Neptune. So the last week or so have not been easy at all. And also the Sun has been conflicted by Saturn and Neptune. And the Sun, of course, is playing catch up with this pair, moving with the summer solstice on Thursday into the sign of Cancer too. So thence starting cardinal quadrant 2. So we're moving into Cancer season. Now we know Mercury can be very much to do with sharing information or perception in a very critical and precise way through Virgo. But the instinctive energies of the sign of Cancer can erode a little bit that clarity, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't still communicate, but we are going to be guided much more by our feelings, and that can in itself create a little bit of miscommunication. So we need to be careful that we do think things through very cautiously. However, the combination between the two of them, which becomes exact at 12:42 p.m. universal, based on Greenwich, because that's where the prime meridian is, well, that gives us an opportunity to express ourselves with a degree of sensitivity, with gentleness. We can be more nurturing. If we want to find a way to build trust in a relationship, maybe it's a nudge to use our minds less, get in touch with how it actually feels, because we are all quite conditioned to use technology, and those communications are very fast, very Gemini-like, but sometimes perhaps we don't always give ourselves just the time to take a breath, let our shoulders come down and really consider what we want to say. And we can say it in a very meaningful way, but we do need to be aware that Pluto, the planet of truth, transformation and power, is in retrograde in the cool, rather detached sign of Aquarius, which is very much about the big picture. It is about being very rational, it's about the future, and it's how we're all connected. But that's not very emotional, is it? So the quincunx that's forged between Pluto and Venus and Mercury suggests that just when we might want to share how we feel, we could encounter someone who uses their knowledge or the power or force of their personality to make a point which could leave us feeling very vulnerable. So just be conscious, there is potential for confusion at the start of this week because of Neptune, and the potential for some kind of tension because someone wants to take on the role of being the seer and penetrating down into our situation and using the force of their articulation in Aquarius, an air sign, to punch through. And if you're around anyone who seems to get off really on putting us right in terms of how it feels, that could be a rather jarring event. However, if we do want to share how we feel with someone who's really important to us, or we want to start a journal, if we're going through something or we're thinking of having counselling, this combination can be really good. We may even decide to invite people around to our home. If you're someone who's particularly good at playing mind host and laying on a spread for people, a lovely time to have such a gathering. Now, I mentioned that I was going to share with you the event chart. So from a solar perspective, you can see that Mercury and Venus are there on the 4th house cusp, and there is Pluto up in house 11. It's going to take a couple of days before that quincunx is exact, but you can also see that with Neptune at 2952 in the sign of Pisces, that's in a square with Mercury and Venus. So as much as we may feel that Mercury and Venus moving into Cancer will liberate us to express our emotions, I still think that things could seem a little bit opaque and not as crystal clear as we might like. But I also want to make you aware of the position of the Moon and also Mars, because they're in a direct opposition, but they're both in fixed signs. And of course, the position of Pluto is in a fixed sign. So we have a very stubborn T-square applying on this exact conjunction as it occurs. So as much as we may want to relate in that more feeling, caring, sensitive, nurturing way, there could be someone we're going to encounter who's very belligerent with that Moon opposite Mars, particularly with the fact that, okay, the square through to Pluto from Mars is lesser than it was at the start of last week, which could have given us a lot of energy and drive, but may have created some conflicts. But I feel because of the fixed energy, if we do encounter something we don't quite feel at ease with, there could be a potential to dig in and refuse to flex. So if we can flex and just give ourselves that space to process those thoughts, those conversations further down that we've had perhaps in June so far, but we could encounter some high energy, high intensity energy, or some rather outspoken viewpoints coming our way. Now I'm showing the event chart from a natal perspective based on Placidus, and the guys are in house 9, which of course is about travel, culture, the big picture, higher truth, perhaps around a relationship. And it just so happens the Sun and Jupiter, the ruler of the 9th house, are all in the 9th house in terms of this overview. But the position of Pluto is interesting because we've got a kind of reversal. Pluto's in house 4. So obviously there's a lot of people in the world who are finding it very expensive in terms of where to live. And that whole debate, whether it's to do with rental or buying, is something that could come into the fore in a big way. Now hopefully we are going to see a drop in interest rates pretty soon, because we've got 2 elections coming up. So politically, even though the parties would say they've got no influence over that, if there is a drop, that's good for us all, but it does create a bit more optimism. Be interesting to see if that happens. But I feel that what Venus and Mercury are asking us to do here is to find our higher truth, even if it's a bit painful in terms of Pluto in the 4th house. Say it as it is. And it could be it's going to be about a financial matter that does need to be discussed because of the Moon being in house 2 and Mars being in house 8. Now Mars obviously has a connection to house 8 because of its Scorpio rulership, but some kind of belligerence may be something we encounter. And even if we do feel a bit tender, we need to be protective, we still need to say how we feel, because remember, Mercury is about talk and thought, and Venus is about relating, but it's also about our resources and our self-worth. Maybe if we don't find it easy to find someone to connect to who has got a more empathetic energy. That doesn't mean to say we shouldn't stand up for what's important to us in terms of our emotional power, what we adhere to in terms of our values, but also being very protective, which is what Cancer energy is about. Just to say also that Cancer is a cardinal sign, of course, and that's about leadership and it's about action. So if you are moving or you are wanting to make those home changes, you can go for it. It's just being conscious of those other planetary influences, principally Neptune, but also Pluto too. I'm going to go through each of the 12 signs and give you a flavour of what you can expect from both planets over the next few weeks. Please stay with me for more. So Aries, what's interesting is because Saturn and Neptune are continuing in your 12th house, they are making you much more conscious of what you need from your emotional life. But perhaps because they are trapped away in the sign of culmination, Pisces, that's been quite an inward journey, or one where at times you felt a little isolated. But if you do want to step forwards, perhaps you have had some sparkling encounters in the early part of June, and you want to turn those into something more connected, this would be a great time to meet up, have those conversations, and feel that you can get the flow around your emotional world. So obviously with COVID, a lot of people didn't see loved ones for a long time. If you're still playing catch up because of that, this is a great opportunity over these next few weeks to have that get together. That will be really pleasant for you. But the 4th house, of course, is also about our environment. And if you are someone who's very much into nature, you love being by lakes or rivers or streams or the sea, give yourself permission to have a trip out to those places as soon as possible. So Taurus, ironically for you, Mercury and Venus moving into Cancer, which is about feeling, is going to represent a kind of Gemini energy because things are going to speed up. But because Neptune and Saturn, and particularly Saturn over the last year and a quarter, has highlighted some future plans or even some alliances or friends that haven't really been working for you, I feel your appetite to reconnect to people can actually be reignited. And also, you can find yourself more active in terms of your professional situation. If you do want to push yourself and go for a job, there's a great chance to reformulate your curriculum vitae, get in touch with a decision maker. But the advice I'd give you is don't rush the process, because Neptune may be just at this present time providing a little bit of confusion about what you really need for your future. And Pluto suggests that if you rush, someone in a position of seniority or influence may actually feel that where you're coming from doesn't quite meet what they require. If you take your time, you can be a bit more tactical, a bit more strategic. Now that sounds like I'm suggesting you shouldn't be yourself, but when it comes to work and employment, unfortunately, because there is big changes going on in that part of society, probably at the moment employers do have the nab hand. So you need to pitch yourself in quite a skillful way. But when it comes to your personal interaction with people, I think you're entering a much more upbeat, outgoing and interactive part of the year. So Gemini, June so far has given you a glorious opportunity to promote everything that's good about you and your ideas, particularly on that very special new moon, which combined with the magic of Venus. But the problem is that initially Saturn and then Neptune have been suggesting that as you've tried to link out to the wider world, you haven't necessarily been received in exactly the way you would have liked, however much charm and talent you've been pitching outwards. But do you know, despite this, keep being tenacious, because over the next few weeks your financial situation can pick up. But also, if you have been adhere to quite a strict diet and doing very well with it, you may find that your discipline starts to drop a little bit over the next few weeks, and anything that's rather yummy is going to be much more difficult to resist. Cancer, the arrival of Mercury and Venus in your sign is really lovely. You've had such a collective of energies in house 12. That's very much to do with withdrawal. Potentially you felt a little isolated, that people haven't been in touch with you as much. or your sensitivities have been running very high. In fact, you could feel this even as Venus and Mercury make their way into your sign. But what they're saying to you is this is a chance to draw a line in the sand, particularly about a relationship matter. If there has been a drifting apart or a complete end around a romantic tie, and even if it didn't happen over the last few weeks, but you've been working through something in a very profound way recently from that legacy relationship, you're going to feel much more able to reconnect with your own individual needs as this week goes on. Mercury may have seen you thinking about something very deeply recently, but not quite having the wherewithal to actually get it moving. Now the spark can be provided, which is really exciting. And particularly once the sun moves into your sign on Thursday with the summer solstice, because that ignition point is going to give you a lot more drive and vitality. What's not to like? It's just that you're now moving into a period where you're determined to take a firmer grip on your life direction. So your need for individual authority over your moves is strong. But if there's someone you're involved with, Pluto in 8, either financially, or it is in a business relationship, or even in a personal one, who's not quite seeing what you want to do, there is the potential for some tensions. But sometimes in life, we have to be very single-minded, particularly if the prize is very important to us. And this may be a period when you do take a firmer grip on your life direction, even if not everyone around you is necessarily fully in your corner. Leo, the collective in Gemini, has given you an awesome opportunity to really enjoy some sparkling encounters. And it may have been quite sociable recently. But of course the 11th house is also about our future plans. And as Saturn and then Neptune last week started to snag on that posse in Gemini, you may have started to doubt or question some of the future hopes that you had. The progression of Venus and Mercury into your 12th house followed by the Sun on Thursday could see you wanting to take a little bit of a breather. But I want to reassure you, because Mars stays in a very dominant part of your situation and a very confident one. Perhaps you've had a few disappointments around your connections to others. A friend or a group of people, some kind of society interest may have not come up to your expectation, and that may have left you feeling a bit flat. You may feel that you need some time just to step back, do a little bit of quiet reflection, perhaps even go through some healing. If you're someone with a particular interest in personal development, that will strengthen a lot over the next few weeks. But that doesn't mean to say you can't still punch out into the wider world, but I feel that you are just needing to be much more protective at this particular time. Virgo, your ruler Mercury moving into your 11th house is really exciting, because if we think about the overall zodiac, Mercury is exalted in the sign of Aquarius, which has the flavour of the 11th house and is the ruler, the sub-ruler of the second decan. So it's very good for social interaction, but also being very idealistic. If you're interested in groups that are for the benefit of people as a whole, then that can be something that really comes to life. But also Venus being there suggests that there could be some friends or certain people in your circle who become much more important to you over the next few weeks. It could be a romantic situation, but not definitely. Then again, in terms of romance, you've been caught up a lot recently professionally. And if that has been a busy time for you, this is a great chance to reconnect, have some playtime together, do something that's more frivolous. Go and watch a movie, go and watch a band or a show or a sports match, and that is something that can reignite the bond between you. Libra, the power of your ruler Venus moving into the most visible part of your scope, along with the planet of talk and thought Mercury, can be terrific, even scintillating, if you want to pitch yourself in a more prominent way when it comes to your business or worldly interactions. For example, if you're very active in terms of your local community, your personality power is something that people can be drawn towards. And that's because you can have that great ability to be quite delicate around the interactions of the people that you're encountering. But also it gives you a chance to use that grace in order to animate your skills. If you have been thinking about having a change of job or role, Mercury on the 10th house cusp often points towards some kind of retraining or perhaps reskilling or adapting past experiences in a new and fresh way. Now, obviously, recently you have had a little bit of a conflict because both Saturn and Neptune in house 6, responsibilities and obligations, have been competing with the collective in house 9, which has been pushing you to be more free-spirited, perhaps more spontaneous, and break away from those obligations. But if you're really serious about changing things up in terms of your professional aspirations, the next few weeks can really see you make quite significant progress. But also the 10th house cusp with Venus in the mix could be around a relationship matter, and if you're really getting on well with someone but it's a relatively new tie, perhaps over recent months, you might want to take it to that next level of commitment, and that could be linked to a property, perhaps moving in, getting a lease, or perhaps buying somewhere too. Scorpio, for you, this is quite the event because, of course, the moon's in your sign and it's in an opposition with Mars, your traditional ruler. So you could feel more impulsive. And because these guys are moving into house 9, if you have been going through some heavy stuff recently, particularly around your love life, with Saturn and Neptune, house 5 of romance, clashing badly, with initially Venus, then Mercury, then the Sun, it's possible as you come into this week that you are feeling a little bit bogged down with the politics. So Mercury can be very much to do with ticketing, planning, anything to do with the digital world. The 9th house can be to do with travel. Venus can be to do with feeding our senses, with a change of environment. If you are someone who's interested in culture or travel, a great opportunity for you to now have that break or vacation. That desire to break out and be more adventurous will become stronger once the Sun moves into Cancer on Thursday. What about your modern ruler of Pluto? Well, that's in house 4. That's been urging you really to work out how things feel at the root of your life. These set of influences are pushing you to be more daring. There is a mismatch. So if you are caught up very much in changing where you live, or family politics, or your emotional world feels a little unsettled at the present time, you may not quite be in the mood to break out in such an adventurous and vigorous way. But what you can use with this 9th house energy is to download a lot of information and knowledge to help your emotional journey through Pluto. Sagittarius, Venus and Mercury moving into house 8, is really a test for some of the conversations that have gone on recently. Because you've had a lot of planets in your sector of relating, if you have had some connections and they're going well, those connections can get deeper. But the converse can be true because you have Saturn and Neptune in the 4th house of emotion, and you just find it very difficult to align or connect to people. There's some kind of inhibition. The travelling of these two in house 8 can help you to really dive deep and explore why there may be some resistance within you, or perhaps you've experienced resistance from someone else. In a more practical way, these two moving into your 8th house can be good for finance. So if you've been waiting for some kind of payout on a legacy or a pension policy, a savings plan, that money could come soon and give you quite the lift. But you can also, of course, because the 8th house is joint resources, benefit from someone else's good fortune. If you're an entrepreneurial Sagittarian, as often is the case, if you have been talking and connecting to people with the potential for a partnership, it may not have been flowing quite as well as you would like. So the next few weeks is going to be critical in what decisions you finally make. Capricorn, Venus and Mercury moving into your 7th house is lovely because Venus rules this house. Mercury in 7 is more detached. Mercury in 6 in Gemini is frazzled, it's brittle, it's getting headaches. Venus there may have felt that however much you've tried to be a good person and do your bit to assist other people, they're not necessarily seeming to recognise it. So Venus and Mercury moving into 7 can help to create a greater sense of harmony. And that collaboration and cooperation and partnership can be something to really embrace. But also, if you're single and you'd like to meet someone, that in itself could also be an exciting opportunity. Just be aware that Pluto in 2, house 2, it's about values. If your values don't mesh with someone, however much you get on, that eventually is going to be a niggle. Also, because Neptune is so late for you in house 3, choose your words with great care, because it could be that you are feeling a little more sensitive than you may realise. And also, it's possible that with this energy developing in house 7, that someone will reach out to you and want to collaborate with you, particularly if you work for yourself and you've got some exciting ideas. Aquarius, Venus and Mercury moving into house 6 requires a little bit of sacrifice. Now, Pluto in your own sign has been giving you more strength, more desire to assert your individuality, which is good. However, the collective you've had recently in your sister air sign of Gemini is very bubbly, it's very effervescent, it's warm, it's friendly, it's affectionate. What's not to like? But it's just that Saturn and Neptune have seemed to have really caused some issues. Saturn, of course, your traditional ruler. Perhaps you haven't quite had the resources or money to enjoy your playtime as much as you would like. Perhaps that has had an impact on a romantic relationship or even with your children. And, you know, that's something that is really quite challenging. So the movement of Venus and Mercury into house 6 is asking you to think more about the details. So, for example, if you have come up with a brilliantly creative plan of late, now you can find out how you can deploy it, but that's going to take a more earthy approach. Obviously, Cancer is about making sure it feels right. If you're not completely comfortable in a job at the present time, this could be an area that you work on. If you love pets, you may be yearning to bring a new one into your home over the next few weeks, for sure. But most of all, it's about getting your world working in a more efficient way. But that can be just as true as our relationships. And Venus in the 6th house can be to do with colleagues. And in a personal context, it's really collaborating in a more skillful way in terms of who does or contributes what on the domestic front. Pisces, Venus and Mercury moving into house 5. Well, Mercury in house 5 is much more playful, much more frivolous. The magician that is Mercury really comes to life after that rather subdued phase for you. You may have been thinking a lot about where you live and issues around that. But also Venus moving into 5 is very glamorous. If you have felt that you've been a bit cocooned away and a bit separated, a fine time to join up with others and have some kind of get together and really enjoy the interaction from an emotional viewpoint, which is obviously very Cancerian, but your water element is really being fed by this change, and you're going to feel even better once the sun moves as well. So a lot of vibrancy. What's going to hold you back? Well, it could be some deeply rooted anxieties or worries that you have or old issues, and that's Pluto in the 12th house. And of course Saturn in your own sign and Neptune in your own sign have perhaps been inhibiting in terms of energy, or perhaps seeing you lacking a little bit of spark. Harder to get things moving with those two in your own sign at the same time, particularly as they've been applying to those Gemini planets in your emotional sector. But now you can be freed up a little bit, and maybe it's about embracing the concept of being a bit more risk-taking. Now, I'm not talking about taking risks to the point of putting yourself in peril. What I'm talking about is if you are someone who tends to play a little bit more conservatively, or you like to stick to the haunts or people you already know, just pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, even if you take some small steps to begin with, can absolutely be really cathartic, brings a sense of excitement and spark, and then you're off and you'll gain momentum. If there is someone you've been getting to know recently and it's been a bit of a slow burner, things could really ignite now in a much more playful, even attraction-based way. It's been a real pleasure being with you through this Venus-Mercury special. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it grow and do so now.